when I stepped down from the Supreme Court, I had not planned ahead really for what I would do. My husband suffers from Alzheimer's, and he had reached the stage where he really needed to go into an institution. We have 3 sons, and 2 of them and their families live in the Phoenix area. I thought that he ought to be living in a place where at least some of our children and grandchildren were, so that they could assist with visiting and making arrangements. So I decided Phoenix was the place and that I'd better step down. And I felt that I had a little energy left and a little time left to work on something that needed doing. And that something was to try to help America understand why the framers of our Constitution took pains to establish 3 branches of government, including a judicial branch, and why they structured it the way they did, and why we need that system and structure at the state level as well as the federal. And it seemed to me that I was hearing more complaints about judges, activist judges, than I had ever heard before. Now, in my younger years, when I lived over here east on the Lazy Bee Ranch, we had a highway that ran through Duncan, Arizona over to Lordsburg. There was a big road sign, "Impeach Earl Warren." Remember those years? People were pretty mad at Earl Warren. Now, our highway wasn't very busy. I don't know who put that sign up, but there it was. And in those years, I thought that was a lot of criticism of the courts. But in more recent years, it has become very, very common indeed. And how many of you have listened to presidents on down talk about activist judges, secular, godless humanists trying to impose their will on the rest of us, as though that's all we have in the judicial branch, and how common it is, say the speakers. And I thought, well, we really do need to do a little education. The Annenberg Foundation occasionally does some opinion polling. I'm sure you've read Annenberg polls. And their polls recently show that barely a third of Americans can even name the 3 branches of government, much less say what they do. Barely a third. And you know already that the polls show that most young people can name at least 1 judge on American Idol, but none on the U.S. Supreme Court. I mean, the extent of the lack of knowledge and the extent of the discomfort felt by many with judges is overwhelming. In Congress, a large number of members of Congress are very disrespectful of judges. Federal judges have not had a pay raise since 1986. That's a long time. In the last budget session, Congress gave all federal employees a cost of living increase. They gave themselves a cost of living increase, but it excluded federal judges. No cost of living increase. Well, I mean, this is a lot of dislike going on here. And I thought, well, maybe we can try to educate Americans a little bit. Now, my primary focus has been young people. I think it's hard to educate an entire populace of adults. Hard to reach them. We've tried that. We've had 3 nationwide conferences on judicial independence and corporate relations with judicial elections and so on. But you reach only a few people. We thought maybe the best way to reach more is to try to educate a younger generation about courts, what they do and why we need them. So we've been working with the help of Arizona State University, Georgetown University in Washington, and a number of major donors to put together an education program for middle schoolers. Now, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, those are the years when the light bulb sort of turns on, if it's going to. They get curious, and they're not insolent yet like they can be in high school. They're eager to learn. And we thought middle school was ideal. And so we've developed a free website, and it contains all the information in it about federal and state courts. And starting this summer, it will have some interactive games on that website. About 30 to 40% of the free time of young people is spent in front of a computer screen or a TV, and they love interactive stuff. So we thought, okay, we're going to capture some of that interest and energy with games, and we've got some great things being developed. The website is open now, and it does have an interactive part. You can ask the justice some questions, and you can interact with each other about ways that you've learned to learn about civics. And it's going to be a very, very exciting learning tool, a little different. And I think we will find in the future that we will be using things like that much more frequently. So I'm excited about it, and I hope that we are going to produce a generation of young people who are going to know considerably more than the older generation knows today about courts and judges and why we have them and why it matters. So that's what I've been working on, and I've spoken to all constituent groups, the American Association of Social Science Teachers, of school board administrators, of school boards. I've spoken to the 50 state governors and a lot of other audiences as well to try to tell them about this program and to get them on board to use it, because it will be very teacher friendly. All the teacher has to do is turn on a computer screen, and I think most of them can manage to do that, maybe not all. You probably know already that at least half the states no longer make the teaching of civics and government a requirement for high school graduation. Now, we got public schools in this country in the first place on the theory that that's how we're going to teach young people about our government and how it works and how they can be involved. Well, now, only half think it's important enough to teach as a requirement. So we have a lot of changing to do in this country, and a lot of effort has to be put into it. Our federal system, as designed by the framers, envisioned that the president would nominate and the Senate would have to confirm the appointment of federal judges. And the concept brought the legislative branch into it somewhat through the Senate at the appointment stage, but no retirement date was established, age limit for federal judges in the Constitution. That's left open, although federal judges are encouraged to retire after they've fulfilled so many years by taking what we call senior status, which means a somewhat reduced workload, and many of the judges take advantage of that. The states, as they became states after the formation of our nation, followed the federal model, and they all had initially some form of appointment of judges, and some of them had legislative confirmation processes and some didn't. But none of the states initially elected their judges. Along came Andrew Jackson. Now, maybe you admire President Jackson. He is probably my least favorite president because of this one thing.